I want to kind of give you some real-world examples of how we've used the SharePoint system, InfoPath forms. We're currently on the SharePoint 2010 platform. I know some of you probably are as well still. We're hoping to migrate to 2013 here in the next year, I hope, if budget constraints allow us. So these are kind of some of the forms that we've created in SharePoint and InfoPath, and I'm going to kind of walk you through them a little bit. Also, I work for an insurance company. I don't sell anything about SharePoint. We just use the product, so I'm not here to sell anybody anything. I really can't offer you anything unless it's health insurance in the US, but I don't even know anything about the insurance product. So it's like I'm in the HR department in IT. So one of the first things that I got introduced to InfoPath was our business continuity plan. And they came to me and they said, okay, we've got this 20-page document. We want to be able to put it on SharePoint and have our users use it. I'm like, okay, that's great. So what are you going to do with it after you get done putting it out there? They're like, well, what we expect to have happen is we're going to put it out into SharePoint, and then every month or so we'll have updates to the form. And we want all of our users to go out and update the form individually. We want them to move this section to this piece. We want to change these words, and we're going to expect our users to go out there and manually make those changes every month. And it was like, I don't think that's going to work really well. And your users are probably the same as mine. A lot of them know Word, but to move a section from one area to another and actually know what to do with it and change the word, how many different documents do you think we're going to end up with? We had like 100 divisions that we're talking about that are going to be updating these business continuity plans on a regular basis, and expect to keep a copy on a regular basis that's going to be a master copy. The thought was impossible. And plus, what they also needed to do is they're going to be making these revisions all the time. We've got, like I said, 100 divisions. We've got multiple users using it. If somebody leaves the department and then another person comes in and takes their spot, how are they going to know what's been changed and updated? Also, they wanted to do reporting and auditing. And so with the reporting, they wanted to have all of these documents in SharePoint or on a file share, and they were going to go through and manually audit each and every one of those documents to make sure that everybody had compliance throughout the document. I mean, it's just impossible task of just having a file share or a Word document and then manually updating those. So that's kind of where we went from there. We decided, let's look at InfoPath. What we can do with InfoPath is, the nice thing about InfoPath is it can be a really text-heavy form. You can put as much information out there as you want to. So we took the form, we put all of the content in there, and then we just had the form fields available for them to fill in the pieces that they needed to know. We've got all the information about what they're going to be doing, what type of information they need to put in each of the sections. I mean, our business continuity plans are really cumbersome to fill out, but we wanted to give them as much information as we could. We also, how many of you guys use InfoPath now? You guys using it? Yeah. I love it. I know it's supposed to be deprecated eventually someday, but it's still alive. I'm still going to use it. So we built the repeating tables, the repeating sections, so that they could go in and they could fill in additional information. We didn't necessarily need to pass all of that over to a SharePoint list. The only pieces that we needed to know for compliance purposes and reporting were if they completed the section or not. So what we did at the bottom of each of the sections, we just had a little spot where they could check a box and say, yep, I filled that out. So that's what our reporting was based on. We had a section at the top that said, this is the division I'm filling it out for. I'm the key business partner that's going to be filling this out. So we had all of that information. But again, all we needed were these little check boxes completed so that we know whether they completed the section or not. Once they marked each of those sections completed, you'll notice that we have a standard piece of form on the form itself that would show them where they were in their completion status. So if they didn't have anything done, they were lacking capability. Level 1, these were the different sections in the form that they had to complete. And they could see really quickly and easily which ones were completed and which ones hadn't been filled out yet. And we've got dates on here of when they actually completed the exercise so that we could track the dates too, because some of them are required on an annual basis. So we needed to know if they filled it out at that period of time. Then section 2, 3, 4, 5, we had different levels of their completion on their forms themselves. So once we had that completed, Then we needed to actually report the information. So again, we built the form in InfoPath, pushed some of the data over to the SharePoint list, so now we can track what's in there. So we can see really easily that, this was the division that completed it. Here's the planner that actually filled out the information and got it completed. So we had somebody to go back to and say, hey, you're missing this part or not. Then we had each of those levels again, like I was saying, how far have they completed? And we marked it complete or incomplete depending on whether they filled it all out or not, whether they checked that little box. So there was probably, I think there was 20 different sections throughout the form that they had to complete. Again, this is our list of all of our completions. What date did they fill it out, or have they marked it completed? If it's not an annual requirement, they just could check the checkbox. So in order for us to indicate whether a level was complete or not, we had to build a if statement, a nested if statement. So it said, if the customer section is completed and it's marked true, and the communication section is completed, and the plan details are complete. So this is our if statement. So if they had completed all of it, it would mark it complete. If they hadn't, it would just put little dashes there. So it was easy to see for reporting. So again, we just walked through, did a big nested if statement for each one of those completed sections so we knew where they were completed at. Once that was done, then we could actually do the reporting that they needed. And so we just exported the SharePoint list to an Excel document, and then we put some conditional formatting on it. So that way they had a quick, easy view of where everybody was at just a glance. So they can see, facilities, level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, they were still in the red. They hadn't completed those yet. These are the different areas that they had completed. Again, it's just an Excel list that we've exported. The nice thing with being able to export lists is you can always refresh the data and it stays connected to your SharePoint list. So just like you would in a pivot table, you can do refresh all and it updates the pivot table. This is just a list that we created, and because it's connected to the SharePoint list, you can just hit refresh and it'll go back out to the SharePoint list, save it back into your Excel document, and you've always got it connected. So we didn't have to rebuild the look and feel of this or the conditional formatting every time they needed to update the report once a month. Again, it was just a quick refresh. They had the information. So with the conditional formatting, we just put in some conditional formatting that said, if this is blank, mark it red. If it's not blank, mark it green. And then we had some date calculations too. And again, the date calculations, if they put in there in a certain date, if it was an annual refresher training that they needed to do, we wanted to find out, did they complete it? This was our quarter one. If today minus 92 is equal to this, then put it in there. Or if it's annual calculation, it added 365 days to it. So we know whether they completed it. So it kind of gave them some expiration dates. And again, then our business continuity planners could go out to those individuals and say, hey, you haven't completed this. And they could do the reporting to upper management. So it was kind of a nice way for us to get that information for them for the reporting. So again, with the master document, we now have a way to be able to update that form. The users don't even really need to look at the form anymore or go in and say, okay, I'm going to change this word in this spot in the document. Everything's updated in the InfoPath form by just republishing that template because it's always connected. Then we built that calculated field so that we knew that everything was complete in each of those sections. And then we created that view that they can filter and say, hey, show us everything that hasn't been completed for section 1, section 2, section 3, whatever area we needed to. And then again, with a conditional formatting, again, just that refresh all on the Excel spreadsheet gives you all the information and you don't have to worry about continually updating it. Another area that we worked on was our job description template. So again, what they were doing was they were using a Word document. They had, I think we had like 2,000 job descriptions. Kind of outrageous for only 6,000 employees. We needed 2,000 documents for it. But what we needed to do is we had all of these Word documents, and with all those Word documents, everybody, anytime we needed to change like the template or the format of it, we would have to go into every single one of those Word documents. So again, here's where InfoPath came into play. If we wanted to change the logo on all of those, we had our master underlying template. We could push it out to all the documents that were out there rather than having to go in and update every single Excel or Word document that was out there. The other thing that they needed with the job description is the managers a lot of times didn't really know what to put into each of the sections. They didn't know how to word things the right way for legal purposes. They needed some coaching and help about, if I'm going to do this, how many years of requirement do I need? How many years of experience? What are the skill levels needed? What's the education type required? So we tried to make the form a lot simpler for our managers where they could do some click and checks and drop down lists. And again, InfoPath is what came in for us. So this was our original document. And again, if we wanted to change this document in several Word documents, we'd have to go into each one of them individually, change, let's say, the evaluation date now changed to be review date. You want to have to do that with all of your documents. Again, if you update that master InfoPath form on the backside, just pushes out to every single document out there. So they wanted to keep this document pretty much the same, but use InfoPath to fill it out. So this was our model that we took from. So our primary fields here, we've got the job title. We needed to be able to put that in there, our job code, pay level, and then we needed all of this text stuff. That's what InfoPath is great for, is all the text information. And then some of this stuff is just standard, random, your job description and all other duties as assigned kind of thing. Like we can make you do anything because we wrote that into the job description. So we needed to keep that essentially in there for everybody. So this is actually the InfoPath form. Now a lot of stuff here, again, it gives a lot of descriptions of what the supervisor is going to put in there. We needed to handhold them and be able to say, here's what you're going to put in this section. Here's how you're going to write the information that's in here. We gave them this section here is where they're putting the information in. Same with up here. And then this is kind of our drop-down area. We wanted to be able to say what type of education do they need? High school diploma, college degree, what type of degree the focus was on, how many years of experience, expertise level, are they professional, is it introductory? And then what it would do is it would actually build the example job description based on what they filled out in each of those forms. So it would say, okay, for this job title, and that was up above, secretary would have a high school diploma, taking from this field here, in general education, or a related field and 6 years of introductory experience based on that. And so, and this was the experience needed, so it'd say secretarial support here. So we kind of had kind of a boilerplate, is what they used to call them, that would fill in all that information. We just have would have is the word. This is just another copy of the field from up above. We're just putting the fields into this sentence for them to build the information. Now sometimes that doesn't always work. I mean, we can only write so much logic for the managers. So if they needed to say, that sentence didn't really work out for me, they could always customize the example and actually create their own words. So it gave them the flexibility to do both pieces. We can handhold them, give them the actual information, or they can put in their own stuff. Now you'll also notice that we've got some icons here. Those are little help information buttons. We didn't want to make this too text heavy, so they had to read through a whole bunch of stuff. So we just put some little icons on there, and I'll show you how we did that. So here's what it looks like actually in the print preview view. So we had the master document. Then on the InfoPath form, we actually created another view for them to see what it's going to look like when it gets ready to print. So again, this was the information where it filled in exactly what all those fields were with some wording in between each of them. And like I mentioned, we could customize the example. They could just manually type it in and just say, secretary must have 2-year degree. And it would replace what this is and put it into the form itself. So it would just skip over this part of it if they needed to. So those information icons that I was showing you, the little dot there is just like a clip art piece from Word. What we did once we had that on there, then we just put some text in the background. So alternative text, just formatting that picture, allows you to do the hover over. So again, it was a good way to have a mix between here's all of the information we're going to spell out for you, or you can hover over this and get just a little bit more information and not make the form so much longer. And if you guys have questions along the way, feel free to ask anything. So again, we were able to build those drop-down lists for them to just pick and choose what they were looking for. We had the print view that's available out there, and then the alternative text. And is everybody familiar with the different views on the InfoPath forms? They're kind of nice because what you can do, let me show you here really quick. Oh, I gotta figure out which one I've got here. So this is actually our job description form itself. So we've got all of the fields here. Everything is just in InfoPath. We've got the fields that we've dragged and dropped in here. So you can see exactly how it's set up. What you can do is you can always create a new view. And let's just call this one test. So now we've got, we're still in the exact same form. We've just created another view of the form. We can pull in the same fields or from the original one if we want to. So they're there. We can always switch back to that other view. So we're back to our job description template here. And then we can say, okay, let's see what the preview looks like. Here's how we built the form itself. We brought in all of those different fields there. We've got a reevaluation request. There's a comp eval. So this is where our compensation team would actually go into the form and evaluate the job. The employees could never see this screen. It's just another view. It brings all of the data into one place, and it's all connected together. You don't have to go to a separate form to be able to look at the information. So they went through and they would do the exemption test to see if they were exempt or non-exempt, and they would go in and fill in the information. And there was a lot of different rules in the back end where it would say if it's this section, that it would fill this information out. So that's just kind of how the different views work. They're really easy to work with, and they do help out a lot if you have different stuff there. So again, that was our that was our job description. This is one I'm sure. Oh yeah.
You might answer this shortly. What would you do with all the data once you capture it? Do you just keep it within the form, or do you push it into another system?
We put it to a SharePoint list. So. Yep. How was that?
How would you keep that in a record?
So with the SharePoint list, you're still connected to the InfoPath form.
I'm thinking about someone who has submitted the form and then sort of edit permissions afterwards. So I'm asking how we going to maintain the integrity of the data. So once it's been submitted, keep it as a record for my people to edit it.
We don't allow the employees to edit it. So what we do is we push it out to a SharePoint list, and then they actually turn around and publish it as a PDF. So the actual document in the end, the job description. Yeah, sorry. So the reason that we did that too is because we actually have to publish it to state agencies, and they require the PDF version of the document. So again, it was just to build the initial form, and then it was that print view that we sent to PDF. But we kept all the information about, what did compensation do to evaluate the job.
Are you using a form library here or a list?
So kind of a couple different examples here. These ones were actually using the InfoPath client, and then we were publishing it to a document library. But then I also have some examples where we've done a SharePoint list and customized the form. And I've been leaning a little bit more towards that, doing the SharePoint list and customizing the form, because in my mind, I think that SharePoint has to have, or Microsoft has to have some path to migrate that to whatever solution they're going to come up with down the road. I'm worried about being developed in InfoPath client and then trying to migrate that to the next solution. I just don't know how that's going to work over the long run. And then we've always taken our InfoPath forms and made them browser-based so that they can fill them out on the browser side. We had some problems with not making them browser-enabled with iPads or Apples, Macs, whatever they are. So once we made them browser-enabled, then our Mac user could still use them. So another area that I'm sure most of you guys are familiar with are performance reviews. We had kind of different performance reviews. We had some performance reviews for our managers and different ones for our employees. We've since made that a little bit more common. We needed our supervisors to be able to complete one section and then our employees to be able to fill out another section, because you don't want your employees to go in and edit what their manager said about them. We needed to have some restrictions on the data or the information in the fields there. We needed the manager and the employee to both be able to sign off on the form, but only on their section that was relevant. And then the other thing we needed to do is we need to make sure that the form's protected from other users. Because everybody's using the same SharePoint list, we had to control that access so that nobody could see what somebody else got on their review, of course. So this is just an example of one of our performance review forms. We just filled out general information, populated the information from our user profile data. There's just drop-down forms. Here's the information for the supervisor's comments and then the employee's comments. And again, they couldn't fill out each other's information. So the way that we control that is when they select the employee's name on the list here, we have a populate employee demographic information. So they fill in that information, and then it goes out to our user profile and says, okay, this employee's manager is this person. They know that in the system. So once we've done that, we can identify who can fill in the supervisor comments. This is our click to sign section rules. So this is where we said when the form is opened, we know who the form was opened by. We bring in their user information. We set a field in the form that says, this is our account domain. We said, go ahead and bring in their information and their username. That's the person that opened the form. Then we said something on the click to sign piece, and then those different sections for controls. And we said, if the person that opens the form isn't the exact same person that was the manager or the employee, depending on the section, don't let them be able to do anything in this section. So we disabled the control by saying, if it's opened by is not equal to the account ID, then they can't do anything there. We also said that they couldn't click the button a second time. So we said if the employee signature spot is not blank, then also disable it. So they've already signed it, they can't click the button again. Does that make sense, everybody? So again, this is the part where we did the employee signature. So once the employee signs it or clicks the click to sign button, let me show you what that looks like again. So if I'm the employee in here, this button is going to not be grayed out. They'll be able to actually do something with it. They won't see the second level evaluator signatures or the the manager's part. They'll click this button here, and then we need to populate the employee's signature and the date that they signed it. So the way that we did that is we said when that button is clicked, we're going to go ahead and put the signature date as today. We're going to say the status is now the annual review's been signed by the employee. We're going to set the field account name is equal to the username. And we have a query using a data connection called get user profile by name. Has anybody used this? It's kind of nice because you can pull it in and then it gets all the user profile information. And then you have to say set a field's value to the signature, the last name, first name, and it populates that information for the users rather than just their employee number, because that's not very helpful. We actually need to see what the employee's name is on the signature.
You don't use an electronic signature.
What was that?
Do you use an electronic certificate?
No, we're not doing electronic signatures. This was enough for our compliance and our legal department, was just to be able to say that they signed it on that date. Because we always have the date created and modified, and then we have versioning set on the forms themselves too, so we can always have that historical information if we needed to. So the next piece of it was controlling who had access to what forms. So what we did is in the workflow in SharePoint Designer, we did an impersonation step. How many of you guys have used impersonation steps in the past? Yeah, they are a great tool. It was like fabulous to find them. So what you do is you go into your workflows, and you have to do it above this. When you go ahead and create a new workflow, it'll put a step out there, but you actually have to go above it. So if you click in here, impersonation step will become available for you. You click on that impersonation step, and what you'll be able to do is now you'll see a couple additional action items available. You can say add list item permissions or remove list item permissions. So we had ours set up so that everybody in the company could create a new form. So once we allowed them the ability to contribute and add an item to the list, we needed to take that access back away once they've created it. So we said, once you've created it, then we're going to remove the list item permissions for everybody from the company. We have a all authenticated users AD group that we have set up. So we say, okay, go ahead and wait for the document to be unlocked. We don't want it to be locked at the time because then the workflow doesn't work quite right. Then we say remove contribute access on the current item from these people. So again, all of our authenticated users, we're going to take away contribute access from them. Then we're going to add back in contribute access to the manager, the supervisor, and the employee so that now they're able to do something with the form. We're going to give them contribute access. So we said whoever created the form probably should still be able to see it. The manager should be able to see it, and the employee should be able to see it. So again, we took away the contribute access, and then we granted it back to the individuals that needed to be able to be part of the form. So it was a great way, again, for us to be able to control who had access to those lists. Now, one thing that we found out down the road, which was a little disconcerting because we thought everything was protected. We wanted to make sure that nobody can see anything. So you also have to remove the ability for users to create alerts. Because if they can create an alert on your list, they're going to get an email before the permissions are restricted. And then they get an email that says, hey, this review's been completed on this employee, and here's all the information about it. And it was like, oh, shoot. That was not a good thing. So make sure that you remove the ability to create alerts. I said delete versions. I removed that too, and then those different things. So again, do not let them be able to create alerts because it will mess you up a little bit. So this is another example of one of our other performance reviews. This is for our employees. This is kind of more of what a standard performance review looks like. There's a bunch of drop-down fields. We had all of this general demographics information about the employee because what we do after we get done doing our performance reviews, we image them into a performance file system that we have, an electronic system. So we have to have all that information to go along with it. So just general, again, population information. You'll notice that we have an update information tab here, or a button here, and instructions. These, again, are just different views on the same form. Again, we don't want to just dump a ton of data on the form. We want users to be able to see, let me go to the information tab, or the instructions tab. So when they click on that instructions button, it just takes them again to another view of the form, and then they can always go back to the form itself. So it's a great place to put all that garbage that they don't really need to see. Now the update button allows the user, so when we populate the information initially, we go through and we populate it for everybody. But there is times, like our review period starts in February, and the reviews don't actually happen until May, because we have a whole calibration system. All the managers get together and talk about things. But employees may change jobs, or they may change managers during that 3-month window of when we're doing the review. So we wanted to be able to give the users a way for them to be able to change information about the employee so that it can update that front page of the form itself. So this is our update information page. They can go in and update who the supervisor is. If the employee changed names, got married during that time period, we wanted them to be able to do that too. So again, it's just another little piece that was requested by the managers. So those are the instructions and update information tabs. Again, if you're using views, you just have those little buttons and it says switch views, and that'll switch you back and forth. It's a really simple rule or action that you can do. Now again, on the signature section, this is where we allowed them to be able to click the buttons to sign, and it just populates the information about who signed the document. Again, we didn't use the electronic or signature piece of it, but it was good enough for our purposes of what we needed. One of the other things we wanted to do is we just wanted to add some prettiness to the form. You know, if you click that they had a key rating, we wanted to change it blue. Again, these are just regular rules out of the box. Everything that I'm showing is out of the box. I'm not a programmer. I don't do the back-end coding or anything like that. We've never turned on the different coding in the InfoPath forms. These are just basic, here's a rule that we set up on it. We talked about the instructions view. We also had an employee self-review. We go overboard on reviews. I'll just tell you that now. We say, here, do a self-review. Here, do a 360 feedback review. Here, do another review. It's crazy. So with the employee self-review, one of the problems that we had was users were putting in multiple ones. Like, oh, I started it, and now I can't remember how to get back to it, so I'm going to create another one. Or they just kept doing multiple ones. So we had to go in and enforce unique values so that we would only have one for each employee, so it wouldn't confuse everybody. So again, this is just in list settings. You go to list settings, just enforce unique values, and you've got that out there. Again, the security workflow, the impersonation step, we went through, we removed contribute access, added back in contribute access. This one's a little bit longer because we had to, if they were in HR, we didn't want all of their HR coworkers to see their own reviews. So we had a specific list of people in HR that could see everything. HR could see all the employees' reviews, but they couldn't see each other's. So we built in some additional functionality here with the HR stuff. So this is our other performance feedback survey. This is like a 360 where you rate your coworkers and send information back and forth. This was just a simple little form that we put out there. But what I'm trying to show you here is once we got done with all of this, another impersonation step, what we did with all of that information is we put it all into dashboards for the managers so that they could see all the information in one area. So this is the manager's feedback survey information. So when people filled out information about coworkers, they could see, here's who it was about, here's the general information about them, here's the questions that were asked. And then in the end, here's the manager dashboard. So we brought all the pieces together. We said, here's the performance review for your employees, here's the self-reviews for your employees, and then here's the performance feedback summary of responses. And all of these are just SharePoint lists that we've brought in together. We've merged them up together and put them all on one page. So we put in a content editor web part that said performance review. We brought an employee or a list to the employee performance reviews because they're all in the same site collection. We've got them all in there. We said on the self-review, again, this is just a content editor web part, another list, content editor web part, and I think this one's just a link back to the summary of responses for all their employees. So some of the different things on here, we didn't want it to say add new item here. So we just did a little bit of jQuery that said, we're gonna hide the add new item message. So this is just content editor web part. We've thrown some HTML in there to remove the add new item. This was really helpful, found it on the web someplace. So the other thing that we did is I wanted to make sure that, again, that second level of security, because we can't have any employees or managers seeing other people's stuff. So we also put on here where we said the current user, there was a current user filter is equal to the supervisor account ID, so that even though we did that impersonation step in the back end, we wanted to make sure that only the current user is going to see their stuff for their employees. So probably not necessary, but it made me feel better to have another level there that said, you're only going to see your employees' information. So again, we did the repeating table, well, I guess we didn't really touch on that, but we did repeating tables in the performance review so that they could add additional content out there. We validated the users to see who opened the form to make sure that they're the only ones that can sign the form. Set a field's value to general information there, impersonation workflow, and then the manager dashboard at the end of it so that we can just bring all that information together. Okay, now another one we had was our company credit card application. Most of the stuff's pretty much the same, but we needed different views again. We needed a view for the instructions. We needed a view for the application for them to fill out the information. We needed a quiz for the employees to fill out, and then an approval process. So our corporate credit card application used to be 3 PDF documents. There was one for the instructions, there was one for the application, there was one for the quiz, and then you would manually route it through our mail system to each manager to have them sign off on it. And our workforce is probably about, I think we're almost like at 30 to 40% of our staff are remote workers that work from home. So to be able to route different things to different users was just an impossible solution. And plus PDF documents or hard copy documents having to sign it just wasn't working out well for us. So what we did, again, info path. This one I think we did as a SharePoint list, or maybe this might have been in the client. We just built an instructions page for them to start with. You know, what type of level of access are you going to be requesting? There's a link to our reimbursement policy. Then step 3, they have to take our quiz. And then step 4, they can start filling out the application. So the quiz part, we had to say that you had to answer these 20 questions accurately before you could get a company credit card. We didn't really care if they answered it wrong and then changed the answer. We just needed to make sure they got 100% on the quiz. So this is what our quiz looks like. We go through and says, okay, say, you know, have you done this part? Who is responsible for that? Did you do this? Okay, it'll change it and say, that's right or that's wrong, depending on the answer. And we have the answers programmed in the back to say, if they answer this one, then change it to yes, or if not, change it to no. And so you can see here where they've got the wrong answer, and it says, please try again. So they can instantly say, oh, it's 45, it's 70, it's 80. They can choose all the different answers until they get it right. We just want to make sure that they went through, they read the question, and they got the right answer. And again, what we had before was they had to fill out a PDF form, fill out all the answers, and then somebody would have to grade it and figure out, did they pass the test or not? It was crazy. So the way that we built this to find out if they passed or not, this is just our InfoPath form. Question 3, yes or no. We have different sections that we hide or show depending on how they answered it. And what we did is each time they answered it correctly, we gave it a score of 10 points. So if question 3, make it 10 points. And the reason that we did that is at the end of it, when their quiz completed button showed up, it would be disabled unless the total of the 20 questions equaled 200 points, because we valued them all at 10 points. So if anything was like 1 point, it wouldn't do anything for them. This button would still be disabled. They couldn't go forward and actually fill out the application until they had question 1 plus question 2 plus question 3 has to equal 200 points for that button to become enabled for them. So again, we're just hiding and showing different sections on that quiz based on their answers, and then we just calculate the quiz score for them to be able to go forward with the application itself. So our wellness program is another one that we built. Our wellness team needed information. We have a huge wellness participation from our employees. It's a great program. We have lots of different offerings for them. We needed to be able to, in this seasonal wellness program that we had, for our users to be able to fill out their form. We wanted tabs that they could see different information for each of the different weeks. This was a 6-week program. So we didn't want them to cheat and go forward and finish all 6 weeks the very first day of the program. We have a lot of happy button clickers that just click buttons to get prizes. So we wanted to make sure that we hid that information from them. So we had our master scorecard. This is all of our different wellness programs we have. We have a 72-hour emergency kit. We had this nutrition program that we had, and then we had our seasonal wellness programs. So it was kind of divided up. Again, there's like 20 different programs available. So some of these were just button clicking. I certified that I did this, click to validate, and they earn the money. These ones were, here's a video that I'm going to watch. We just put a little button icon there. We say, I certified that I've done it, and they get the money. These ones here, we indicate that it's validated by the HR wellness team. We have a separate SharePoint list that we track it, and then we upload the information for them to get validated for those points. So this is an example of one of our programs. This was our core and hardcore. This was the front page of a web page that we built where they can click the register button, registers them for the program. They can only see their journal information. These were the program details. These were the programs that they could take. And when they actually go in to register, this is what the form looks like. They just put in their name and they say, I want to do the core or the hardcore. There was 2 different levels that they could take of the program. So that's all that was involved in registration. They click the register now button. Everything else is hidden until the program starts. We went in and used the current user filter again, so it only shows my information. Just said, if I'm the person that's using the form, then that's what's going to show up on that home page. And then this is our program itself. You'll notice that I've got tabs here at the top that say week 1 through 6. Again, you're not even going to see 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 until that time period arrives. And these tabs, they look great as tabs. They're just buttons. We just change the color based on whether they've clicked on them or not, and we hide them based on whether the week's there or not. This information here, these are just different sections. So there's a section here for the core. And if they've chosen the core, this information will display. If they chose hardcore, a different section would display and this would go away. So it just replaces the different information that's out there based on which program they're doing. So we said, okay, on our rules for those tabs at the top, so here's for week 6. We said, if the hide the week if it's greater than today. So if it's past, or if the program for week 6 starts on this day, we don't want to show it until it becomes greater than or equal to today. We said that we're going to, when the button's clicked, we're going to set a field to be number 6. So the reason that we did that is when you click on that tab, we want to change it to a different color. So it says, if that tab is equal to 6, then change it to this color. That's the way you make it kind of look like tabs. Again, these are what we're doing. We're only focusing on just this button right here. And we're just saying, you know, when you click on it, you can't click on it until this date. We're going to say that you're clicked on tab 6, and then we're going to change the color of it. So really simple stuff there. Now again, if you want to change the program, there's 2 different sections here. So the way I was laying it out, here's your section for core and the different categories we had, and then here's hardcore. So if they chose the core, hide this control. If they chose hardcore, hide this control. And it's just that section that we're hiding and displaying. Now as far as the program validation, so like I said, this is a separate list from our master WellPower scorecard that we have. That's what we call our program. What we do is when the information gets completed, we go through and we say, okay, if the employee has a master scorecard created and the signature line was not empty because we had to have them sign it first, then go ahead and update the WellPower scorecard and stop the validation. And then it updates the information. It says they took the core program, here's the amount they got, and it goes out and updates it. So again, here's the wellness program that we're running at that period of time. When the program gets done, we run a workflow that says, go ahead and update the master list. And so it's just a workflow that we're doing to go ahead and populate 2 different lists there. So again, we use the current user filter on the web page so you can only see your stuff. We talked about the tabs on the page, hiding and showing different sections, and then auto-populating the scorecard once everything was completed. So the last one I want to talk to you guys about is our employee handbook. This was kind of an interesting one because we had an external vendor that was working with us that was charging us thousands of dollars to change any piece of our employee handbook. Like if we wanted to update a link in the employee handbook, they would charge us another $2,000 to do it. It was outrageous. And our employee handbook's like 300 pages or something, I don't know. Outrageous amount. So what we had to do is we had to be able to find a way to use SharePoint for our employee handbook. We wanted to know, one of our legal requirements is what did it look like at this certain point in time? Because legal wants to know, you know, if we get a lawsuit, what did the document look like and what were you telling employees at that time? And then we had to have the ability to print the entire handbook at some point in time as well. So what we did was we built a SharePoint list, or a document library. Actually, no, it was a pages library. So what we did is we built individual pages for each section of the employee handbook. This table of contents is just a content editor web part, or just a screen page of the page. So we just put different bullets out here that link to the different pages on the website. So this is our full handbook view. So everything that's a page prints out like this. The beauty of this is we have everything with a date of when it was modified. So the users can see exactly when that handbook policy changed. We also have a different section for each category. There was a reason that we did that. Of course, we turned versioning on the SharePoint list too, so we can always see when it was updated and by who in our benefits department updated the information. So this is kind of another example of it. Again, we've got our modified date, what section it was for, modified date. You can see these are different dates. So it wasn't our entire handbook was updated, it was just this policy that was updated. So what we did was we created different sections in our handbook and we just used some metadata tagging. So with each of these pages that we have a data sheet view where our benefits administrators can just go in and type different numbers to create that sort order that's going to appear in the employee handbook. So we just said, this is 1.005. This one they put in a couple extra 5s so that they can get spacing there. And then once you get that all set up, you can actually go into your view and set up a view that says, I just want to show the page content, so it'll show everything on the page, the modified date, and the section. And we just set it up as a newsletter view. And that's how we were able to get all of that information to appear when they start looking at the full handbook page. And again, it's just a page, it's a short little document, rather than worrying about 300 pages of the information. But then they can always, when they get ready to, they can always print out the full handbook. Or we can link employees to just one page of that handbook. You know, if it's just like the PTO policy, we can use those links throughout the rest of SharePoint to direct them to that one page.
So it's almost like a wiki almost.
Almost, yeah. Yeah, and we could have probably done the wiki piece, but it seemed like it was a little bit more challenging for us, and they might be wiki pages. I'm trying to remember back to when we set this up. Yeah, so it's been worked out really well for us. And of course, we don't have to pay $2,000 to update one link.
Do you have somebody approving the changes that are made?
We only allow our benefits administrators to make the changes, and so I'm sure they have some process on their side to determine what gets updated and not. We kind of step away from that. That's one thing that we always want to be able to do, is enable our users to make the changes and do all the administration. We don't want to have to do anything on our side in the IT department for it. So again, we turned on our versioning control to make sure we know when something was changed and by who. We have the ability to print out the entire handbook. And we ordered the handbook by the different metadata that's out there. So again, just try to make it easier on your users, as easy as you can. Give them the tools to be able to administer the stuff themselves so that they don't have to come to you for every little change they need to make. Make sure and train your users. Happy users love SharePoint. It's great. It's something that you want to make sure that they know how to enable them to be able to do the different things. One of the other things that we did a lot with our workflow actions, and you guys might have done this in the past, is when you have a workflow that needs to be re-triggered, like if somebody didn't fill out the form that they needed, you can put on the drop-down list, you can add your own quick actions right there so that people are able to quickly do a workflow instead of clicking a button and then go up to the workflow section. The way that you do that is in the workflow settings. If you're on the list, you can go to custom actions and you can say list item menu, and from here you can just say schedule a work or initiate a workflow, and it will be able to send that out right from there. So you just do a little drop down on the list ribbon. You can also put it in the ribbon bar at the top if you want to. And if you scroll down, which is funny because me and another coworker, we were always just doing this initiate workflow. If you scroll down a little bit further, there's a spot where you can actually add icons on there. So you'll see like little mail icons on there so people know what that type of workflow is going to do. So that was all I had. I hope somebody had an aha moment, like, hey, I can use this for something else that I'm doing. Not all of them are necessarily just for human resources. I think there's a lot of stuff that people can use in different applications. So any questions?